In the previous class, we are discussed about the types of national interest, the definition and the meaning of the national interest. Now we are going to concentrate on the instrument of the national interest. ಈ ರಾಷ್ಟ್ರ ಹಿತಾಸಕ್ತಿಯನ್ನ ಬಳಸಲು ಅಥವಾ ಅದನ್ನು ಬೆಳೆಸಲು ಇರುವಂತಹ ಮಾರ್ಗಗಳು ಯಾವುದೆಲ್ಲ, ಯಾವ ಉದ್ದೇಶಗಳನ್ನ ಯಾವ ಮಾರ್ಗಗಳನ್ನ ಬಳಸಿ ನಾವು ಈ ರಾಷ್ಟ್ರೀಯ ಹಿತಾಸಕ್ತಿಯನ್ನ ಬೆಳೆಸಬಹುದು. There's a various points given in a textbook. The first 10 points are there. First one is the diplomacy. The first one is diplomacy. Second is propaganda. 3 economic demands. 4 alliances and treaties. Fifth one cohesive measures. 6 embargo. 7th blockade and 8th foreign aid. 9th one tariff restrictions and quotas. 10th one is sanctions. These are the important instruments to improve the national interest. We are studying about the first one is national diplomacy. Diplomacy is a means of national interest. How it develops the national interest. Diplomacy is a universal adopted accepted means through which the national interest is realized. National interest is developed through the diplomacy. Diplomatic negotiations achieve the desires, goals and objectives of the national interest. Is a national interest to develop the negotiations of the nations, negotiations and the goals and objectives of the nations. The diplomacy involves the presentation of the goals and objectives of national interest in such a way pursued other to accept the just demands of the nations. What is the demands of the nations? Diplomatic negotiations are other important method for the promotion and the protection of the national interest. Diplomacy is supported the national interest of any nation. It is a promote the culture, economy of the nations. Interest of the state through the process of mutual give and take. The give and take procedures are followed in a diplomacy. It is the techniques of controlling the argument that normally occur between the delegations of the officials. The diplomacy are under the come under the ambassadors of the nations. They are negotiations of the nations are built between the ambassadors. Then second one is a propaganda. What is a propaganda? Propaganda is a second important method to securing the national interest in every country. It involves the attempt to press upon the nations the necessity of securing the goals of the nations. Propaganda is usually directly addressed to the people. We all know that all our propaganda is all about. Is the other seeds and aims of secure of the states. Propaganda is a realization. Propaganda is a realization of the state interest in each and every sector. The means of communication like the intents is increased the scope of propaganda. Increased the scope of the propaganda is a means securing the support and goals of the government of the national interest. The government and the national interest of any country is under the is explained in a propaganda of the state. USA propaganda against the Muslims world in the West example is a modern technology for the promotion of national interest. They are supported the weapons. USA always supported the weapons and the defense sector. They are against the Muslims because they are always supported the defense sector. So USA supported the propaganda against the Muslims in each and every country. Then another one is economic demands. What is economic demands? What is a economic man? Economic aid. It is also known as a economic aid. We are get the economic aid from the different countries or different organization in each and every time in the natural calamities, in the time of cyclones. All these are come under the natural calamities. Under this time, we are get the economic aid from the different countries or different organization in the world. This is an important sector to develop the national interest. India also supported the national economic aid given to the some other nations. The big powers were provided the economic aid and loans to the uh, any other small countries, any other poor or less progressive developing countries to promote their national interest. We are all know that the USA, Britain, all these nations are supported the economic aid and economic loan given to the poor nations or developing countries because they are get a popularity about this way. The national protect their national interest. The terrorism, the Pakistan USA aid, the Pakistan against the terrorism, and some of the examples of economic means to realize the national interest. Rich and developed nations use the economic and loans to means securing their interest in a international level. Is the international level. Then alliances and the treaties. What are the alliances and treaties in a international level? Alliances are generally concluded two or more nations protection of the common interest of the nations. Common interest of the nations. As a result, the alliances, the protection of these common interests become legal obligation. Is that various acts treaties was conducted in the world is the NATO, SEATO, CENTO, Warsaw Pact, then all these are come under the military alliances or treaties in that time. Is that these alliances concluded in the protection of the protection of the various countries. Is the Robinson? All these are supported. The thinkers are supported these types of treaties. These devices are mostly used as securing identically complement to the nations. These complements are given to the states. Alliances, either the military or the economic. We are all know that the military alliances are different, economic alliances are different, and the political alliances are different. They are think that they are different, but in a common national interest. Their common national interest. The need for the economic reconstruction of the euro after the Second World War, establishment of the European Common Market, now European Union, and several other become agencies. Indian national interest in 1971 led to the conclusion of the Treaty of Pieces of Friendship and Cooperation with the Soviet Union on alliances and treaties are the popular in the realizing this matter. All these are alliances and treaties are supported the national interest in their own way. Then another one is a cohesive means. Cohesive means is often the international relation securing the national interest. Non-inter-embargoes, boycotts and retention, retaliation, subvention, regulation, popular cohesive means used by the force. Other accept a particular course which is considered have the nation using the cohesive means. This is the method all we are used in the national interest. War aggression with the declared illegal is declared as a illegal by status of the course in an international relation. Is the negotiations, diplomacy, all these are come under the cohesive minds. Then is a embargo. Embargo. It's a one of the techniques. It is the techniques to the economic war. It is the economic war, some sort of restriction, full or partially, imposed out the enemy state and the alternative source of supply and the alternative market. Such a state will greatly suffer and her economy might break down. Embargo is imposed by the larger economic power following the US is an example. The USA imposed the embargo against the USSR in the 1950. Czechoslovakia became the communist in 1949. This is the one method, is the embargo is the one method to suppress the nations to their national interest. Then second one is during the Korean War, the USA applied the complete embargo against the China in 1950. Is the 1950. And in 1962, USA imposed complete embargo against the Cuba. Then 1973, Arabs imposed the oil embargo on the European countries. All these are nations are there protect their national interests. Some of the common methods they used to protect their national interest. Then second one is a blockade. Blockade. The method is used in war as well as in a peacetime. Blockade is imposed to restrict or prohibit all imports. It is what it is. It is a restrict or prohibit the all imports from overseas the enemy's countries. Overseas the enemy's countries, all export from the enemy's ports to the overseas all are prohibited. These are called as a blockade. The blockade against Cuba in 1962, the example given to the in the textbook, the blockade of the Iraq by security. Next is the foreign aid. What is the foreign aid? When the state transfers the money, goods, service and technical assistance to the other nations, other countries, which are known as a foreign aid. One country give the technical, economical, money, goods, service, technical assistance given to the other countries. It is called as a foreign aid. Is one of the most important instrument. It is a promotion of national interest. The process of giving and receiving the foreign aid started just after the end of the Second World War. After the Second World War, it is possible the foreign aid, the method of foreign aid. The USA aid to contain terrorism is the best example in this connection. Tariff restriction. What is the tariff restriction? Tariff restrictions and quotas also play a very important role in the promotion and protection of the national interest. Tariff restrictions impose the restriction like quota tariff unless its objectives are not fulfilled. US is the major buyer of Pakistan cotton. USA is the major buyer of the Pakistan cotton. In order to achieve her foreign policy objective, she may refuse the buy cotton on imposed quotas restriction. Pakistan is sent to the USA the cottons. All these are the national interest procedure, that are techniques of the national interest to protect their national interest. Then the sanctions. This kind of punishment is the most effective weapon is the international community to protect and promotion of the national interest. It means total or partially by wealth of the trade, investment, aid, grants and other economic relation by imposing countries against the one intended to be the punished. The punished is the aid, grant, take the grant, aid, investment, other economic sanctions or and other economic aid from the countries. These are the sanctions of the UN sanctions against the South Africa on the ground of racial discrimination. Then UN sanction against the Iraq in the 1990 and the 91. These are the important instrument to secure the international, protect the international national interest. What is the main point? Diplomacy, propaganda, economic math, alliances and treaties, cohesive measures, embargo, blockade, foreign aid, tariff and restrictions, and the sanctions. These are important instrument of national interest.